Hello everyone and welcome to another AWS Tech Talk. My name is James Wynn. So today I want to talk about the AWS Well-Architected Framework and hopefully ask the question or get you guys to ask the question to yourself, are you well architected? I'd like to cover off an overview of what the AWS Well-Architected Framework is, go through all the different pillars, a little bit of the history of it, where it came from, how it started, and then give you an overview of the well-architected tool. So let's jump straight in. So what is the well-architected framework? The well-architected framework is a framework that allows cloud engineers and architects to build highly protected, robust, and efficient cloud infrastructure for different applications and different amounts of workloads. It helps you as an architect or a cloud architect to understand the pros and cons of decisions you make while building systems on AWS. It also helps you to review and understand workloads. This is certainly not something that should be performed once off on a workload in your AWS environment, but you should be constantly reviewing on a regular basis your workloads. The well-architected framework is made up of three different areas. The first are the pillars. There are 5 pillars which cover off different areas, and there was a 6th one that was introduced at AWS reInvent last year, and I'll get into those a little bit further down the track. It also incorporates design principles and then a set of questions. There are general design principles and questions, and there are also specific design principles and questions per each pillar. So the general design principles are made up of a few different areas. Some of them talk about around stop guessing your capacity, having the ability to test systems at production scale, automate and make architectural experimentation easier, allow for evolutionary architectures, drive architectures using data, and improve through game days. So let's have a look at the history of the AWS Well-Architected Review and where it actually came from. So in 2012, AWS solution architects started going to customers and asking them, are they well architected? Are they working to best practices in what they've developed in the cloud? Over time, that developed into a common set of questions that solution architects were using to ask customers, are they well architected? And asking them if they know what AWS best practices are for architecting in the cloud. By 2013, this common set of questions started being asked by a lot of different architects or solution architects within AWS to a lot of different customers. So AWS realized they needed to create a consistent set of questions across the board. So ask those questions around best practices. And that's why in 2014, the first set of questions across 4 pillars, security, reliability, cost, and performance, were developed. By 2015, AWS realized that not all of their customers had access to a solutions architect, so they published the Well-Architected Framework as a white paper. This incorporated all the best practices that they had learned from doing thousands of reviews with customers. So this allowed customers and people using AWS to have a look at that and to read that white paper and get an idea of what well architected in the cloud looks like, and then potentially apply it to their workloads. By 2016, they'd added the 5th pillar to the framework, which was operational excellence. In 2017, AWS Partner Network partners could become trained to deliver the same level of value that AWS solutions architects were delivering using the Well-Architected Framework. So they developed what was called the AWS Well-Architected Review Bootcamp. This allowed AWS partners to go into their customers and perform well-architected reviews to the same standard as what AWS were doing. In 2018, this is when they launched the self-service well-architected tool in the AWS console. This tool also included improvement plans, which allowed customers to do a self-service well-architected review on their workloads. So it allowed them to log into their console, see all the questions, all the best practices across the 5 pillars, and then perform a self-review on their workloads. And then based on their answers within those reviews, AWS had generated some improvement plans for those workloads. Over the next few years, there are a lot of different updates made to the framework and questions across the 5 pillars and the tool itself. In 2021, AWS launched the sustainability pillar. They also launched, which is the 6th pillar, they also launched the ability to customize your well-architected review, allowing customers to customize the review more to their industry or workload type, etc. So I keep talking about these pillars. Let's dive into them a little bit further. So the 6 pillars of the framework. So we start off with operational excellence. Operational excellence is really to dive deep into how you support and develop and run workloads effectively on AWS. It's really there to gain insight into your workload operations and then help you to continuously improve processes and procedures to deliver business value. Some of the best practices that are covered in the operational excellence pillar are things like perform operations as code. So wherever possible, don't perform manual tasks. Rather, use tools such as CloudFormation or Terraform to automatically build your infrastructure. Make frequent, small, and reversible changes. Rather than large changes or big bang rollouts, it's better to make the best practice to make smaller, more frequent, easily reversible changes so that if something does go wrong, you can roll back as quickly as possible and minimize that downtime of your workload. Refine operation procedures frequently. So this talks about constantly reevaluate how you're doing things and is there a better way of doing it, or has AWS released a new service and that might help you better refine operations. Anticipate failure. Make sure you always anticipate what could go wrong and make sure that you're able to recover from failure when it does happen. And also learn from all operational failures. So when you do have a failure, when something does go wrong, make sure you update your processes. Work out why did it happen and what can I do next time to prevent it from happening again. So the next is the security pillar. So security pillar, pretty straightforward. Protect data, systems, and assets. Take advantage of cloud technologies to improve your security. So, AWS offers a lot of different cloud technologies and services to help you secure your data and your workloads in the cloud. Some of the best practices around the security pillar include implement strong identity foundation. This is across IAM, Identity Federation, mobile and web app authentication systems. You need to get these right so your identities are properly secured and but your users still get access to what they need. Enable traceability. So the ability to trace what is happening and being able to identify when things go wrong. Apply security at all layers. Don't just apply security at the perimeter, but make sure that every layer of your application and infrastructure has security applied to it. Automate security best practices. So the more you automate, the less human error you're likely to have. By automating security best practices, you remove that extra layer and you can be more reliable in the way that you manage your security best practices. Protect data in transit and at rest. So this is really talking about encryption, using KMS to customer managed keys or default keys to encrypt your EBS volumes. Make sure they're encrypted. Encrypt your RDS instances, S3 buckets, and then data encryption. Make sure you're using HTTPS TLS or VPNs when you're accessing or transferring data in and out of AWS. Keep people away from data, so have the right access and controls in place to control who can see what data and who can't see data that you don't want people to see. And then prepare for security events. So make sure you're prepared in case of any malicious security events, such as a DDoS attack. So the next one is reliability. So this really delves deeper into your workloads, ensuring a workload can perform its intended function correctly and consistently when it's expected to. So design for failure. Um, make sure you have the most uptime in your workload. This includes the ability to operate and test a workload through its whole life cycle. Best practices in the reliability pillar include automate recovery from failure. So wherever possible, if a system fails, you can automatically recover. Don't require manual involvement. Things such as EC2 autoscaling. Test recovery procedures. Cloud makes it a lot easier for you to test your recovery procedures, including a full DR testing. The ability to be able to spin up, have the capacity to be able to spin up an entire replica of your workload, and then test to make sure that it's come back okay. Your data data integrity is up to standard, and then have the ability to blow that away afterwards and only pay for that time that you're using it. Scale horizontally to increase aggregate workload availability. So some services require you to scale vertically. For example, RDS database. If you need to increase throughput, you need to increase the instance size. But what happens if that instance fails? You can in that instance you can have multi-AZ failover, etc. But wherever possible, for example, DynamoDB, EC2 instances, you can scale horizontally, which means failure of an individual component does not affect the running of your workload. Stop guessing capacity. This is a big one. So the ability to dynamically change the amount of resources you have available to you. So stop guessing that capacity. Make sure you are constantly testing it. Manage change in automation. So you really want to implement change management procedures and automate as much as possible. Now we're going to cover the performance efficiency pillar. So the ability to use compute resources effectively to meet system requirements and to maintain the efficiency as demand changes and technologies evolve. So some of the best practices here, looking to introduce advanced technologies. So, AWS wants you to leverage the technologies and services they provide. AWS native tools, managed serverless services. Go global in minutes. So a major feature of the cloud is the ability to adopt your applications all over the world very easily. Use serverless architectures. So wherever possible, use serverless. It means you're not managing the underlying layer of the infrastructure and you have the ability to scale more easily. Experiment more often. AWS really promote experimentation in the cloud, playing with new services. So you want to experiment on the cloud. We can learn a lot from testing and playing with new technologies. The cloud makes it a lot easier to do this. Consider mechanical sympathy. One of AWS's phrases. It means you need to understand the systems and the purpose of those systems that AWS make available to you so that you can use them to their best effect. So the fifth pillar is the cost optimization pillar. This is really the ability to run systems to deliver business value at the lowest price point. So some of the best practices you want to start thinking about, implement cloud financial management, adopt a consumption model, measure overall efficiency, continuously measure and make sure that you're optimizing your workload for cost. Analyze and attribute expenditure, being able to review your itemized billing and understand what your costs are and where they're coming from. So the sixth pillar, which was introduced late in 2021, is sustainability. So this is really to help organizations learn, measure, and improve their workloads using environmental best practices for cloud computing. Sustainability is a shared responsibility model. AWS is responsible for the sustainability of the cloud. The AWS customers are responsible for sustainability in the cloud. So this pillar is designed to support companies in developing a better understanding of their workloads, using environmental best practices for cloud computing. Understand your impact, establish sustainable goals, maximize utilization, adopt a more effective hardware and software offerings, use managed services wherever possible, and reduce the downstream impact of your cloud workloads. So now that we've covered off all the 6 pillars of the framework, let's have a bit of a look in the well-architected tool. So here we have the well-architected tool. If you navigate to the AWS console, you will see this. There is you start off by defining the workload that you would like to run the well-architected review across. There are 4 different lenses. You have the serverless lens, which focuses on the design, deployment, and architecture of serverless application workloads in AWS. So we're talking about RESTful microservices, mobile application backends, stream processing, and web applications. We then have a SaaS lens, same as the above, but for software as a service workloads running on AWS. You then have the FTR lens, or the Foundational Technical Review. This is designed for independent software vendors who are preparing for AWS Partner Network. And then new as well is the custom lens, which allows customers to bring their own best practices based on industry, operational plans, internal processes, and to complement the existing AWS well-architected framework. So as we can see here, once you've performed once you've run through all the questions in the tool, the tool will then provide you with an overview of any items that are a high risk item and medium risk item across all your pillars. All these items are then identified, as we can see here. This particular well-architected review, we answered all 52 out of 52 questions. Out of that, there were 7 high-risk items identified and then 16 medium-risk items. So based on that, if you're using the well-architected tool, for each of those high-risk and medium-risk items, the tool will give you some suggested remediation and different AWS services that will help you to remediate those items. If we move right along to the questions themselves. So if we look at this, we have the first question of the security pillar. How do you securely operate your workloads? So you can see here that the questions are set out into 3 clear sections. You have the question. We then have the context. So it goes into a little bit more depth around what they're meaning about that actual question and how that applies to your workload. We then have a list of best practices. So based on how you answer that question, you can tick off some of these best practices if you feel like you're using them currently. So for example, separate workloads using accounts. So if you do have separate accounts for your prod, dev, test, SAMP environments, you would tick that off. If you're running your production, dev, and test environments in a single AWS account, you obviously wouldn't tick that off. And then at the end of the well-architected review, that would be raised as a high-risk item. Securing your AWS account. So we're talking about making sure that you've got MFA set at the root user level. identity and validate control objectives. So looking at how you manage your identity, IAM, your federation, user federation, etc. So also you'll notice there that there is an option that allows you to not apply for this workload. So out of all the 52 questions, because AWS has designed this to work across any sort of workload that runs within AWS, not every question is going to be applicable to the workload that you're running. So, for example, some of the questions, if we're talking about reliability and it starts to talk about auto scaling or running CI/CD pipelines, if your workload that you're running a well-architected review on is a monolithic single server, cattle style application, then some of those questions won't be applicable. So that's really all I have to do to cover off the well-architected review. I suggest jumping in to your console, having a look at the tool, and have a go at running through a well-architected review on a workload. Hopefully I was able to teach you guys something today and give you some more information around what a well-architected framework is. Thanks for watching.